The Camellia's Secret. Chapter 1. The Echo of Unspoken Words. The morning, it arrived, with a quiet ache. Caroline Beaufort, 65 years old, moved through her Charleston home. The air, heavy with the scent of jasmine and salt, felt suffocating. This grand house, nestled in the historic South of Broad district, usually hummed with life. Now it echoed with absence. Her husband, Tom, was gone. Suddenly, unexpectedly, just 3 months ago. And the silence, it was deafening. Caroline, a retired archivist, elegant even in her grief, felt untethered, lost. Her life, a beautifully organized narrative, had abruptly lost its ending. She had spent her days among stories, but her own felt unfinished, broken. She found herself wandering through Tom's study, his pipes still smelling faintly of cherry, his worn armchair, the faint scent of him still clung to the air. She missed his booming laugh, his quiet hum, the way he always knew how to make her smile. Even on the darkest days, before he died, in those frantic last moments, he had tried to tell her something. She knew it. She felt it. A flicker of urgency in his eyes, a hand reaching out. But the words, they hadn't come. And then he was gone, leaving her with a tormenting question. What had he wanted to say? Her gaze fell on his old digital camera, lying on his desk, discarded, forgotten. It was an older model, a little scratched. Tom had been obsessed with capturing moments, especially in their beloved Charleston. He always had it with him, taking photos of everything, of her, of the camellias in their courtyard, of the ancient oak trees. A sudden thought, sharp as a needle, pierced through her haze of grief. Had he taken pictures right before he died? Maybe there was something there, a clue, a message, something he had wanted to show her. She picked up the camera. It felt cold, lifeless. She pressed the power button. Nothing. She tried again. The screen flickered, briefly, then died, and a tiny, ominous icon flashed. Corrupted files. Her heart sank. Corrupted. All of them. The last moments lost. Just like him. Just like their unspoken words. Tears pricked her eyes. It felt like another cruel twist. He had tried to tell her. She hadn't understood. Now even the digital remnants were denied to her. The camera felt heavy. A testament to a communication that had failed. A final, frustrating barrier. Grandma? A voice broke through her despair. Her grandson, Ethan Hayes, stood in the doorway. 30 years old, sharp, modern, with a gentle kindness in his eyes. He worked in digital restoration, breathing life back into faded photographs and old videos. He had arrived from out of town to help her pack, to help her sell the house, a house she suddenly couldn't bear to leave, not now. Not with Tom's last message hanging unspoken in the air. Ethan, darling, she managed, her voice thick. She held up the camera. It's Tom's. I think he tried to tell me something, but the files, they're gone, corrupted. Ethan's brow furrowed. He took the camera from her, his fingers already examining it. Corrupted, huh? Let me take a look, Grandma. Sometimes, corrupted just means a complex encoding, or a bad sector. I can usually salvage something. A faint spark, a glimmer of hope. Ethan. He was a wizard with technology. If anyone could retrieve those lost moments, it was him. Perhaps, just perhaps, the echo of Tom's unspoken words wasn't lost forever. Chapter 2. Fragments of a Memory. Ethan set up his makeshift workstation in Tom's study. His laptop, a sleek, humming machine, sat on the mahogany desk. Wires snaked across the polished wood, connecting various devices. Caroline watched him, a silent sentinel, a flicker of hope stirring within her. He began working on the camera. His fingers flew across the keyboard, commands scrolling rapidly on the screen. He tried different recovery software, specialized algorithms designed to piece together fragmented data. "These aren't just corrupted, Grandma," Ethan mused aloud a few hours later, his eyes narrowed in concentration. "They're odd. The data structure is highly unusual. It's almost like a digital collage, a purposeful distortion." Caroline leaned closer. "What do you mean purposeful?" "It's not random damage," Ethan explained, pointing to the screen. "See these patterns? These repeated glitches? They're consistent. It's like someone took fragments of images and pieced them together in a very specific, non-linear way. Almost like a puzzle. Or a code." He managed to extract some raw, fragmented images. They were bizarre. A fleeting glimpse of a cobblestone alley, a blurred shot of an old church steeple, a distorted image of a historic gate. None of them seemed to make sense. They were familiar places in Charleston, yes, but they weren't typical tourist shots. They were taken from unusual angles, or at strange times of day. "These places, they're all over the city," Caroline murmured, trying to make sense of the jumbled visuals. "Some of them aren't even on our usual walking routes." Ethan zoomed in on one particularly fragmented image. It was a close-up of an old, weathered brick wall covered in ivy. Something glinted faintly in the upper left corner. He enhanced the image, pushing the digital limits. "Look, Grandma," he said, his voice hushed. "Do you see that? Barely visible, almost imperceptible, was a tiny, intricate symbol, etched into the brick, and next to it, a series of numbers. It wasn't graffiti. It was too precise, too deliberate. It looks like a digital signature," Ethan mused, "or a watermark, something embedded after the photo was taken, but before it was distorted." Caroline felt a shiver. Tom was fascinated by old Charleston, its hidden histories, its secrets. He always said the city had a language all its own. "This isn't just a broken camera, Grandma," Ethan said, looking at her, his eyes serious. "I think Grandpa Tom was trying to tell you something. Through these fractured images, he was leading you somewhere." "But why so complicated?" Caroline asked, her voice trembling. "Why not just tell me?" Ethan hesitated. Maybe he couldn't, maybe he didn't have time, or maybe it was a secret he wanted you to discover. A final adventure for the archivist. He leaned back in his chair. "I've found something else. Hidden metadata, in the deepest layers of the image files. It's encrypted, and it points to a cloud storage account, Tom's private cloud. A cloud account, a digital vault. A new wave of hope, mixed with trepidation, washed over Caroline. This was it. This was the real message, the heart of the puzzle. "Can you access it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan tried. The screen flashed. "Password protected, and it's a strong one, complex." He tried a few obvious ones. Birthdays, anniversaries. Nothing worked. "Tom always loved riddles," Caroline said, a faint smile touching her lips. "He was obsessed with the old Charleston legends, the secret societies, the unsolved mysteries. He called them Scriven ciphers, after an old Charleston historian who wrote about them." Ethan looked at her. "Scriven ciphers? That's it. He used to talk about those, obscure stuff, like a forgotten language of the city. Grandma, do you remember any specific ones? Any favorites of his?" Caroline closed her eyes, searching her memories. "The lost chimes of St. Michael's," she murmured. "He loved that one. The legend of the church bells, whose original tuning forks were supposedly stolen during the Civil War." and how their return would resonate with the heart of the city. Ethan's eyes lit up. That's it. A legend, a riddle, a password. We'll find it, Grandma. We'll find out what Grandpa Tom wanted to tell you. Chapter 3. The Resonant Path. The password. It became their obsession. Caroline, drawing on her vast knowledge of Charleston's history and Tom's peculiarities, worked alongside Ethan, the digital decipherer. They were a formidable team. She provided the context, the forgotten legends. He provided the tools, the digital precision. The lost chimes of St. Michael's, Caroline repeated. Tom believed it wasn't just a legend. He thought it was a metaphor for something hidden, something that needed to be found, to resonate with the heart of the city. They delved into Tom's old notes, dusty books on Charleston folklore, and obscure historical documents. They found his scribbled annotations, his marginalia, filled with questions, connections, and his characteristic wit. Ethan used his forensic skills to analyze the corrupted photos again. He realized that the fragmented images, when layered correctly, formed a sequence, a progression, not just random places, but specific landmarks. And the tiny digital signatures he'd found? They were dates and times, leading them on a digital scavenger hunt through the city. These are coordinates, Grandma, Ethan said, pointing to a restored image of a weathered plaque. Not GPS, but historical markers, like a breadcrumb trail, leading to the clues for the password. Their journey began. They walked the cobblestone streets of Charleston, visiting the locations from Tom's collaged photos, the ancient gates of the Battery, where Union soldiers once stood, the shadowy alleys off Church Street, where whispers of old duels still lingered, the quiet, sun-dappled graveyards. At each location, they found a small, almost invisible detail, a carved symbol on a fountain, a unique brick in a wall, a specific pattern in an iron gate. Tom had left them clues, embedded in the very fabric of the city they loved. Each clue was a fragment of the password, a letter, a number. It was like Tom was walking with them, guiding them. His presence, so palpable, a bittersweet comfort. Caroline felt her grief slowly shifting. It wasn't disappearing, but it was being transformed, from a suffocating weight to a driving purpose. She was solving Tom's last riddle. Finally, they stood before St. Michael's Church, its steeple reaching towards the heavens. The legend of the lost chimes spoke of a secret chamber in its spire, where the true resonance could be heard. Tom had always been fascinated by it. They found the last clue, carved into an old oak tree in the churchyard. It was a sequence of musical notes. Tom, ever the romantic. Ethan typed the combined clues, the letters, the numbers, the musical sequence, into the password field for Tom's cloud storage. The screen flickered, a moment of agonizing suspense. Then the word, access granted. A folder appeared, labeled, "For Caroline, my last resonance." Caroline gasped, her heart pounded. This was it, the true message, the unspoken words, inside. A series of video files. Not static images, not just photos, videos. Tom's face, his voice. Ethan clicked the first one. Static. Then, a familiar, comforting presence. Tom, sitting in his study, right where they were now. His eyes, though tired, were full of his characteristic twinkle. "My dearest Caroline," Tom's voice began, a little hoarse, but unmistakably him. "If you are watching this, then our Ethan, our brilliant boy, has done it. You found me. You heard me." Caroline buried her face in her hands, sobbing. Tom, his voice, living, breathing, a miracle. Chapter 4, The Camellia's Heart. Tom's video diaries were a revelation. He spoke of his love for Caroline, his joy in their shared life, their shared passion for history. And then he spoke of a secret, an obsession that had consumed his last months. "My love," Tom's voice continued, a hint of excitement now in his tone. "I stumbled upon something extraordinary, something that connects our family, the Beauforts, to a legend far older than Charleston itself, the Camellia's Heart." Caroline knew the legend, the Camellia's Heart. A priceless ruby, allegedly passed down through the Beaufort family for centuries, said to be imbued with mystical properties, lost during the Civil War, when their ancestors hid it from Union soldiers. It had been a family myth, a wistful tale. "It's not just a legend, Caroline," Tom explained in the video, his eyes burning with intensity. "It's real, and it's not just a jewel. It's part of something else, an ancient mechanism, a device, hidden here in our house." He went on to explain he had found obscure family records hidden in the attic, old letters, fragmentary journal entries. They spoke of the Camellia's Heart not as an adornment, but as an artifact, a key, a memory anchor, as one ancient text described it, said to be able to capture and transmit memories, to allow the echoes of the past to resonate in the present. "I believe it's tied to the very foundations of this house, Caroline," Tom revealed, his voice growing more urgent in a later video. "The original builders, the early Beauforts, they were not just planters, they were keepers, guardians of this artifact. They integrated it into the house itself." He showed glimpses of his search, old blueprints he'd unearthed, markings on the house's original timbers. He spoke of a hidden room, a secret chamber known only to the first Beauforts, a repository of their deepest secrets. Caroline watched, mesmerized. This was Tom, his brilliance, his passion, his unyielding pursuit of truth. He had been so immersed in this, and she, in her own world of grief, had missed it. Then the mood in the video shifted. Tom's face grew paler, his voice weaker. He began to speak of his declining health, the doctor's predictions, the knowledge that his time was short. "I wanted to find it for you, my love," Tom said, his voice thick with emotion in the last video. His eyes welled with tears, "as my last gift, my final act of love. Something to remember me by, something to anchor our memories." He held up a small, shimmering object, a deep red, heart-shaped ruby, gleaming, radiant. "I found it, Caroline," he whispered, his voice triumphant yet weary. "Behind the fireplace, in the library, it was hidden in a false brick. It's the Camellia's Heart." He showed it to the camera. The ruby pulsed with a soft internal light. "And it's more than a jewel, my dear," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "It's a key to the hidden room, the true Beaufort archives, the place where our family's real story lies, and where, when my last message for you is truly enshrined." He looked directly into the camera, his eyes full of love, a profound peace settling over his face. "I wanted to tell you, Caroline, that I've loved you beyond measure, every single moment, and that love, it transcends time, it transcends everything." He paused. His breath hitched. He coughed, hard. His hand flew to his chest, his face contorted in pain. The video flickered, the image distorted, the sound broke up into static, and then it went black, abruptly, horrifyingly. Caroline screamed, a sound torn from her very soul. The end of the video, the end of Tom, She clutched Ethan's hand, her body trembling uncontrollably. Ethan, his own face pale, his eyes wide with horror, held her tight, the unspoken words, the desperate reach. It wasn't just a simple message. It was a profound final act. Tom, in his dying moments, had found the Camelia's heart, not just for her, but to send her his very last thoughts, his love. Chapter 5. The Architect of Memory. The silence in the study was profound. Caroline and Ethan sat, shattered by the abrupt, harrowing end of Tom's last video. The grief, momentarily softened by discovery, returned with a new, sharper edge. He had been dying, he had known, and he had chosen to spend his final moments in a desperate, loving quest for her, for their shared history. "The library," Caroline whispered, her voice raw. "Behind the fireplace," he said. They moved slowly, as if in a dream, towards the library. The room was grand, lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. A massive brick fireplace dominated one wall. Caroline approached it, her hand trembling as she touched the rough stone. Tom had touched this. His last moments had been here. Ethan, drawing on his knowledge of old Charleston architecture and Tom's meticulous habits, began to examine the bricks. He felt for subtle inconsistencies, hidden catches. He remembered Tom's fascination with masonry, with secret passages. Finally, his fingers brushed against a small, almost invisible notch in one of the older, darker bricks. He pressed it. A faint click echoed through the quiet room. A section of the brickwork just above the mantelpiece slid inward with a soft scrape, revealing a dark, narrow opening. A small, hidden chamber. Ethan shone his phone's flashlight into the darkness. The air was cool, undisturbed for centuries. The chamber was small, circular. Its walls were lined with ancient, leather-bound books, scrolls, and neatly stacked bundles of parchment. This wasn't just a hidden room. This was the Beaufort family's private archive, a treasury of untold stories. In the center of the room, on a small wooden pedestal, rested a velvet cushion, and on it, glowing with a soft internal ruby light, was the Camelia's heart. More beautiful, more radiant than even the video had shown. It pulsed faintly, as if with a heartbeat. Caroline stepped into the chamber, her eyes fixed on the jewel. She reached out, her hand trembling. She picked up the Camelia's heart. It felt warm in her palm. It hummed softly, a delicate vibration that resonated deep within her. And beneath it, on the velvet cushion, lay a small, beautifully bound journal. Its leather cover was old, worn smooth. It was dated, early 1800s. This is the journal of my great-great-grandmother, Caroline whispered, her voice full of awe. Eleanor Vance, the first Caroline Beaufort. She was the last known guardian of the Camelia's heart. She opened the journal. The elegant, flowing script filled the pages. It spoke of the Camelia's heart as more than a jewel, as a sacred artifact, a memory anchor, passed down through generations, a device designed to capture and resonate the most profound memories, emotions, and intentions of its bearer, to transmit them, to ensure they were not lost. It holds the very essence of love, one entry read. It sings the song of the soul, but its power must be wielded with pure intent, for it can be overwhelmed by grief, by despair, by a sudden surge of overwhelming emotion. Caroline's eyes widened. Tom, he had known, he had believed, he had tried to activate it in his dying moments, to send her his last thoughts, his love, his farewell. He wasn't just giving her a jewel, he was giving her his very soul. The journal also spoke of the proper activation, a gentle touch, a clear intention, a heart open to receive. Tom, in his dying moments, perhaps overwhelmed by pain, by his desperate need to communicate, had pushed it too hard. He had tried to force the connection, causing the visual and auditory distortions, the corrupted files. He hadn't broken it. He had simply overloaded it, trying to send too much, too fast. Caroline looked at the Camelia's heart in her hand. It pulsed, gently, waiting. She looked at Ethan, her eyes filled with a profound understanding. He tried to tell me everything, to send me his love, his last moments. He tried to give me his memory. Ethan nodded, tears shining in his own eyes. He wanted you to know, Grandma. He wanted you to feel it. His last message wasn't just words, it was his whole heart. Caroline closed her eyes. She focused on the Camelia's heart. She thought of Tom, his laugh, his warmth, their life together. She focused on her love for him, on her longing to hear his unspoken words. She pressed the jewel gently to her chest. A soft hum. A warmth spread through her, not just in her hand, but through her entire being. And then, a kaleidoscope of images, flashing, bright, vivid. Not her memories, his. A shared sunrise over the battery, his hand holding hers, his smile, the feel of her hair against his cheek, his voice whispering her name in the quiet of the night. Their wedding day, their first dance, and then a surge of pure, unadulterated love, so strong it brought her to her knees. A profound sense of peace washed over her, and then a clear, unmistakable thought. Tom's voice in her mind, my Caroline, always, forever. Goodbye, not farewell, until we meet again, my love. The images faded, the warmth lingered, the hum subsided. The Camelia's heart pulsed softly in her hand. Caroline opened her eyes. Tears streamed down her face, but they were tears of profound, aching joy, of recognition, of connection. She had heard him. She had understood. She had received his last precious gift, his heart, his love. Chapter 6, the unwritten chapter. The house in Charleston, once a symbol of Caroline's grief, was now a sanctuary, a repository of enduring love, a testament to a connection that transcended even death. Caroline, though still grieving, was no longer lost. She had found her ending, or rather, a continuation. Tom's final message wasn't just a secret uncovered, it was a promise fulfilled. He had found a way to bridge the chasm of silence. The Camelia's heart rested on a velvet cushion in Tom's study, a luminous reminder of his enduring love. Caroline would hold it sometimes, gently, letting its subtle hum connect her to his memory. She didn't seek to experience the full intensity of his last moments again. The gentle echoes were enough. The knowledge was enough. Ethan, initially arriving to prepare the house for sale, was now deeply rooted in its history. His pragmatic worldview had been utterly transformed. He saw the house not just as a building, but as a living archive, a place where stories, emotions, and even souls could leave their indelible mark. He realized the depth of his family's history and the profound, unspoken connections that bound them. He decided to stay in Charleston, to help Caroline preserve this legacy. He offered his skills in digital restoration, not for profit, but for passion, to digitize the ancient Beaufort archives found in the hidden room. to meticulously restore the delicate handwritten journals, to ensure that the secrets of their family and the power of the Camelia's heart were preserved for future generations, not to be lost, not to be forgotten. The house, once destined for sale, now felt more alive than ever. Its rooms seemed to whisper with stories. The scent of camellias in the courtyard seemed sweeter. The light through the windows, brighter. Caroline would often sit in Tom's study, the Camelia's heart softly glowing on the desk. She would write, not a history of Charleston, but their story, her and Tom's. A chapter that, even after his death, had found its most profound and beautiful ending, and a new beginning. She knew Tom was always with her, in the quiet hum of the Camelia's heart, in the warmth of a Charleston breeze, in the laughter of her grandson, in the very air she breathed. His love, her anchor, a resonance that would never fade. The Camelia's heart, beating softly, eternally, for her. A promise of love that time could not erase. A connection that death could not sever. The unwritten chapter of their lives, now etched in the very fabric of their home, and in the beating heart of a sacred jewel.